Woo! Obviously, I could not let this day go by without chiming in on yesterday's activity on the morning after show. It's the night after. I couldn't let the day go by. I had a huge day, had a film screening for my documentary on women's basketball, and also went to a concert tonight. So I'm a little bit late with this report, but I got to talk about it. Which do we talk about first? Do we talk about Stewart getting MVP, or do we talk about the New York beating the Connecticut Sun? Do we talk about that? What do we talk about? Let's go ahead and start with the piece of fire that people have been talking about since it was announced yesterday. Brianna Stewart was named MVP, and not was just named MVP, voted MVP, was voted MVP under some unusual circumstances, meaning not many first place votes, right? There's a lot of discomfort shrouding this MVP race. Okay, let me just go on the record and say you couldn't lose with any of those three people: Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, and Alyssa Thomas. Right? And I don't say that. I'm totally happy to say when I call BS and that it's not whatever. So I think either of those three players were deserving. You know, if we're going to talk about deserving, that you can make a case for either of those three players. But when there's so much weird stuff happening, like the fact that Brianna Stewart didn't have as many first place votes as the other people in the race, you got to be wondering what's happening when that happens. When somebody who we don't know yet, maybe y'all found out while I was at the concert tonight, this one person who didn't vote for Asia Wilson didn't have them in their top three or whatever. So here's what I have to say about that. Number one, as I say, no BS. Brianna Stewart, great season. Alyssa Thomas, great season. Asia Wilson, great season. All right? I'm not going to post a whole video about why it's terrible that Brianna Stewart won MVP. But I am going to post a video, this one that we're looking at right now, that says anybody who, candidly, is in that top 60 in the media voting who did not put Asia Wilson in their top votes is a clown, period. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's somebody I know personally, somebody I've worked with at ESPN. I don't care who it is. It's a clown. That was a clown move. Absolute clown move. There is no way, absolutely no way, if you know basketball, if you know greatness, if you know award-worthy performances, that you do not have Asia Wilson in your top three. There's absolutely no way. So the W needs to take a look at the voters. Obviously, the W can't tell a person who to vote for, but the credibility is completely in question. The credibility of that person completely in question. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have played ball. You don't have to have played for the Houston Comets or coached in the LA Sparks or the Minnesota Lynx organization. You don't have to have done any of that to know that Asia Wilson, if you want any credibility as a media person, should have been in your top three. They're hands down, turn the book, turn the chapter, turn the page, put the book on the shelf, whatever. That was just a clown move. Again, I do not care who it was, because right is right, right? That's literally not putting Cynthia Cooper in the first 4 years of the Houston Comets existence in your top three. That's like not putting Lisa Leslie in the top 5 of your top centers of all times in the WNBA. It's dumb, and it was personal. So you were mad about the hype. I get it. I think that's why some people didn't vote for Asia, because they're mad about the hype, because they're mad about the hype that the Las Vegas Aces get. I think that has a lot to do with the sentiment against Asia. I mean, hey, your opinion is your opinion. But when you're in the media, and because I've been a voting member of the media before, you got to have a lot more maturity to have a lot more credibility, right? There were people that I didn't know well in the media that I would have to vote for. You know what? I had to get to know those games. I watched video. I did whatever it took to be able to make an intelligent decision about voting. And I'm not petty, so I'm not going to have a personal thing with a player or get hung up on something that a player did or says, or because they danced, or because they would. I'm going to look at game. I'm going to look at their game. I'm going to look at their stats. I'm going to look at what they contribute. Most people don't know what the hell they're doing. I'm convinced of that. Most people who are voting through the media don't know what the hell they're doing. They watch a couple games. They may have been on the WNBA beat for a couple years, but they really don't know what they're doing. So let's start with the W. Let's go through the people that you have that you've given this ability to vote. You've given them voter privileges. We need to take a long, hard look at the people who are voting. There has to be some kind of credibility factor, check in, check off, or whatever, because this is crazy. All right. Now, so that's what I have to say about that. I feel like the MVP race was completely, is sullied because of that. And it wouldn't matter to me, like if that person, whoever it was, didn't vote Brianna Stewart in the top 3. I'd be saying the same thing. It's dumb. It's stupid. How can you claim to have credibility as a media person and not put Brianna Stewart in the top 3? You don't know what you're doing. Period. All right. I wrote that horse enough. All right. So that's what I have to say about that. But let's talk about what qualifies somebody as an MVP. It is a hotly debated topic. What qualifies someone to be an MVP? I'm going off the dome. Literally, I just walked in the house. I'm going off the dome, so I haven't done any slides or anything for y'all this time. But I think about a couple of things when I voted for MVP. I thought about contributions to team, right? How much better did they make their team? And so how do you measure that? So, well, I look at how the team does when the superstar doesn't have a great game. How much impact does the superstar have on their team? Meaning that when they're absent, and that can be absent because of injury or they're absent because they just had a bad game, how well does their team perform? How does the superstar impact the outcome of their team's performance? That's one great way to look at MVP. You got to look at stats, but stats are actually they're not a very straightforward way for judging who should get MVP. Because if you just looked at stats, there's still a bias, because as a media person, you may enjoy a person who has to get theirs the gruff way, like Alyssa Thomas does. You may enjoy that. That may be your bias. Nothing wrong with that. You may feel like I'm tired of these people who get 2-foot shots. There are some people who literally believe that Asia Wilson is not that good because she shoots a lot of high percentage shots. That's dumb too. Okay, let's start there. So let's just acknowledge that there is bias. So there needs to be a rubric. There needs to be a criteria. There needs to be, give the people who are voting at least a set of parameters. At least a set. Maybe you give them 5 and then they have their own 5. But you've got to put something around this so that we're actually seeing voters who are looking at least some part of the same thing. So I look at impact on the team, how the team does when you're not in the mix. I look at head-to-head competition against the toughest teams. So if your MVP is balling out, but not against the best competition, then I don't know that your MVP is really an MVP. So y'all feel me on that? So if Asia or Brianna play well against all the bad teams in the WNBA, but when they face each other, when they face the toughest competition, they're not very good, I don't know that that's MVP quality and caliber. All right. So I look at that. I look at, how they are against the toughest competition. I look at kind of game defining statistics. So efficiency rates are really good. I look at assist to turnover, depending on position, right? I sometimes want to break down data and analysis of when the head-to-head competition. So when Vegas plays New York, or Vegas plays Connecticut and Connecticut plays New York, I look at all of that. I aggregate all of that, and I do that even when I call games in the WNBA and in college. I look at that data so that I can put that in my analysis and have something intelligent to say that maybe most people aren't thinking about. So you got to look at MVP. You got to go beneath the surface. It can't just be about scoring. Clearly, because Alyssa Thomas was in the mix and she wasn't considered an offensive person, even though she scored lots of points. So she even had to make people rethink the way they saw the MVP race. We're so accustomed to watching MVP races be about who scored the most points and who got the most rebounds, that Alyssa Thomas has kind of messed all that up in a good way. So now we've got to, and I'm asking y'all as people who love the game,